Tell me something. Do you like ducks? Once in a generation, we are gifted with something truly special, like nothing you've ever experienced before. There are movies, and then there is cinema. And there is nothing more cinematic than the National Treasure franchise. You think I joke? I do not. I'm a huge fan of adventure movies. Indiana Jones, The Mummy, Pirates of the Caribbean. National Treasure is perhaps the last franchise of this genre that still holds up today. It was exciting, fun, dramatic. It had all the elements you needed to make a highly entertaining movie for the family to enjoy. And that's a key point to stress on. It's enjoyable. That's what a movie should aim to be. Rather than cash in on nostalgic reboots that Hollywood do today, you could be having the worst day. And when you watch a film like National Treasure, all those sorrows are forgotten as you transport yourself into bliss. It's a movie that will change your mood from bad to good. When the first National Treasure was made, it was a surprising success, grossing $347 million against a $100 million budget. The sequel, The Book of Secrets, performed even better, grossing $459 million against a $130 million budget. Sure, it got mixed reviews from critics who called it a blatant rip-off of Indiana Jones and the Da Vinci Code, but the audience loved it. And since these two movies have been released, there has always been a loving fan base for the franchise. But here's what's puzzling me. Both movies were a success at the box office. So why wasn't there a third? And that has been a question still ringing in my ears since the release of Book of Secrets in 2007. Well over a decade later, the third National Treasure film has been in development hell. Sometimes it's greenlit and then it gets scrapped, going back and forth like a game of ping pong that never ends. And the reason why it never ends shows how much people adore these movies. There is a unique and distinct charm about them that is reminiscent of the Indiana Jones and Mummy films, but also rightfully stands as its own story. The issue of finding the right script for National Treasure 3 was perhaps the most significant hurdle preventing the film from moving forward. Both producer Jerry Bruckheimer and star Nicolas Cage have publicly acknowledged that despite a strong desire to continue the franchise, they struggled to develop a storyline that was compelling enough to justify a third movie. In Hollywood, especially for high-stakes franchises like National Treasure, the development process can be incredibly lengthy and challenging. For National Treasure 3, it was not a matter of simply extending the success of the first two films. Instead, the team wanted to create a story that had the same blend of historical intrigue, mystery, adventure, and puzzle solving that made the original films resonate with audiences. The difficult lay in crafting a narrative that felt fresh and exciting while staying true to the spirit of the series. Jerry Bruckheimer himself has mentioned in several interviews that they worked on multiple drafts over the years. Various screenwriters were brought in to try to develop a story that could live up to the expectations of fans. However, despite these efforts, the scripts did not meet the high bar set by the previous films. Bruckheimer's comments suggested that they were unwilling to move forward with a sequel unless they were confident it would capture the same magic. One of the defining characteristics of the National Treasure films was their use of American history as the backdrop for thrilling treasure hunts. The first film explored the idea of a hidden treasure map on the back of the Declaration of Independence, while the second film focused on secrets related to Abraham Lincoln's assassination and a mythical city of gold. These plots were not only inventive but also grounded in real historical events and figures, which gave the franchise a unique appeal. For the third installment, the challenge was to find another historical angle that was both fascinating and plausible enough to maintain the series' charm. The franchise had already tapped into several key moments in US history, so finding a new, untapped source of mystery proved difficult. The filmmakers were likely cautious about repeating themselves, wanting to avoid the appearance of recycling old ideas or running out of fresh historical concepts. The National Treasure films walk a fine line between fantasy and realism, with plots based on highly speculative but still plausible historical conspiracies. One of the biggest difficulties in writing a script for a third film would have been maintaining that balance. The series asked the audience to suspend disbelief, but only to a point. The treasure hunts needed to be grand and adventurous, but still rooted enough in reality to feel grounded. This makes script development particularly complex, as the film needs to hit just the right tone to avoid becoming too fantastical or too serious. The creative team may have had concerns about finding the right level of complexity and realism in the plot. It's likely that some of the drafts were either too far-fetched or not exciting enough. Nicolas Cage himself hinted at this challenge in interviews, acknowledging that the scripts they had considered lacked the depth or excitement necessary for a proper continuation of the National Treasure legacy. Another issue likely influencing script development was the pressure to escalate the stakes. For the third film in any franchise, there is a natural expectation for the plot to outdo its predecessors. In National Treasure: Book of Secrets, the stakes were already raised significantly compared to the first film, with the plot revolving around a potential international scandal and a race to uncover a mythical city. For a third film, the writers would have been tasked with making the plot even bigger, more intricate, and more engaging, which is a difficult thing to do when those movies contrived the suspension of belief on multiple occasions. However, this can be a tricky proposition. Pushing the narrative too far can risk losing the grounded, puzzle-solving appeal of the original films, while not pushing it far enough could lead to disappointment. The difficulty in achieving this escalation in a believable and compelling way could have contributed to the inability to lock down a satisfying script. As the face of the franchise, Nicolas Cage would have had significant input into the direction of National Treasure 3. His character, Benjamin Franklin Gates, is central to the films, and any new story would have needed to provide a satisfying continuation of his personal journey. Cage expressed in interviews that they could never quite crack the code of what the story should be. This suggests that part of the issue was finding a meaningful arc for Gates that felt fresh and necessary. Cage likely wanted the film to do more than just send Gates on another treasure hunt. There had to be emotional and character growth as well. Balancing character development with a thrilling, fast-paced treasure hunt added another layer of complexity to the script writing process. Another factor that played into the script development challenges could have been Disney's high expectations for the film. Following the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and other large-scale franchises like Star Wars, Disney became much more selective about which projects received green lights. This increased scrutiny likely put pressure on the National Treasure 3 script to deliver a near-perfect combination of box office potential, critical acclaim, and franchise continuity. Disney may have also been cautious about committing to a large budget without a script that guaranteed significant box office returns. The success of the first two films raised expectations, but the studio likely wanted assurance that the third film would not only satisfy existing fans but also attract a new audience. This could have resulted in an extended back-and-forth process between the writers, producers, and the studio, further delaying the project. In recent years, Disney has shifted its focus from traditional movie releases to creating series, particularly with the rise of Disney+. This strategic shift was influenced by the growing popularity of streaming platforms, changing in audience viewing habits, and the success of other franchises that transitioned well into the TV format. Instead of pushing forward with a third National Treasure film, Disney decided to expand the franchise by developing a television series called National Treasure: Edge of History, which premiered on Disney Plus in December 2022. Look, I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and watch that show because I didn't want to put myself through that many hours of cringe. But regardless, we know that Disney do not care about the audience at this point, and they'll always have consumers who will pretty much watch anything that already exists in the medium. We saw Disney converting many of its franchises into series, seeing them as an ideal way to extend the lifespan of their IPs. For example, The Mandalorian from the Star Wars universe and WandaVision from Marvel proved that high-quality, serialized storytelling could keep audiences engaged over long periods while exploring new aspects of beloved universes. Given this, the National Treasure franchise, which had been dormant since the release of Book of Secrets in 2007, seemed ripe for a reboot as a series, rather than continuing with the more expensive and risky prospect of another big-budget film. Producing a third National Treasure movie would have required a substantial budget, especially considering the cost of bringing back big names like Nicolas Cage, along with the visual effects and large-scale action sequences expected from the franchise. In contrast, a series format comes with a lower financial risk since the investment is spread across multiple episodes, and the cost per episode is often lower than a feature film. But I say this level of mentality from producers is why the quality of TV and film has declined massively. To not think big, to not take risks, that's not what filmmaking is about. It shouldn't be about playing things safe. There is a saying, with great risk comes great reward. But the producers of today's age do not share this mantra with much enthusiasm. As over a decade had passed since the release of the last film, Disney likely wanted to target a younger audience who may not have seen the original movies. By introducing a younger lead and a more diverse cast, Edge of History also aligned with Disney's broader efforts to appeal to more inclusive and diverse audiences. Another factor complicating National Treasure 3's prospects was the growing importance of international box office revenue. Hollywood increasingly relied on global audiences to make blockbuster films profitable. National Treasure was largely rooted in American history and folklore, which, while popular domestically, might not have had the same universal appeal overseas. A story about the Declaration of Independence or Abraham Lincoln's assassination, while interesting to American audiences and myself personally, might not spark the same excitement in international markets where some historical events aren't as deeply embedded in cultural consciousness. For Disney, the success of international blockbusters meant that a third National Treasure film, focusing again on US-centric historical mysteries, might not perform as well globally, making it a riskier investment. Studios were increasingly leaning towards stories with broader international appeal, which further pushed the treasure hunting adventure genre into the background. In conclusion, a combination of script challenges, shifting priorities at Disney, the rise of larger franchises, and changes in the careers of key players like Nicolas Cage contributed to the delay in National Treasure 3. However, there is still hope for the project to materialize in the future.